Welcome to the Chamber Neighbors Podcast, a show highlighting Chapin's community and commerce. Now here's your hosts, Greater Chapin Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Paul Sadler, and Chapin Neighbors Magazine's Daniel Rendelman.
This is Daniel with the Chapin Neighbors Magazine.
And I'm Paul Sadler with the Greater Chapin Chamber of Commerce.
And Paul, I bet we have a
treat.
I think we have a treat today.
I think we do. Today we do have a treat.
Someone that could offer you treatment.
That's true.
I love that. Daniel, today we are speaking with one of our newer Greater Chamber partners, Miss Mary Alexander with Compassionate Counsel. Mary, welcome to the podcast.
Cue wild applause.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
I don't think we've ever given anybody an applause quite like that before. So, Mary, you are the first, so congratulations.
We have upped our game with sound effects.
We have. Those are great sound effects.
You need to record that for the soundboard.
We will. Everyone's getting that now.
Everyone gets stuff. Anyway.
That's not why we were here.
That's not quite why we're here.
That's not.
So, Mary Alexander, tell us a little bit about your business. What is it's Compassionate
Counsel.
That's
right.
Okay.
This could be a long podcast.
Yes,
depending on how you guys are, we might be a while.
We don't have a couch in here.
Oh.
Well, maybe you need to get one.
That's right.
Oh.
There's a floor. So you're a counselor?
So I call myself a holistic counselor. I'll say off the bat, I'm not a licensed therapist. This is not that. And that's for a really specific reason. So I'm a transformational coach. I'm a doctor of naturopathy, which is holistic medicine. And I counsel people. So I call myself a holistic counselor.
And what do we counsel people on?
Well, trauma, Paul.
Trauma.
How to cause it or
to mess up your kids 101.
Yeah.
Let's all that.
Go.
I've kind of figured out like all my kids will be in counseling one day.
Yeah.
I've already accepted it.
It's all your fault.
So you help people work through the trauma.
So that's interesting because like you say, I've accepted it. Like as if it's a bad thing that they should need some help, but we all have stuff. If you are a part of the human race, you have some kind of limiting belief, you have something, some look that it doesn't necessarily mean the big things that you think of when you think about trauma, like you were molested or that you were raped or that you were held at gunpoint. There's so many other things that qualify, because what trauma is, it's really just my ability to cope, my coping strategies that I have at 5, 6, 7 years old don't match what is happening in my environment. So if whatever's happening, if you don't have a coping strategy for it, then trauma is actually what happens inside of you because of what happened. So that the event itself doesn't necessarily have to be traumatic. Like for me, moving across the country at 15 and going to a new high school that was totally culture shock from the north to the south, in my life, that was traumatic because of the coping resources that I had at 15 certainly did not match what was happening in my environment. So that was a source of a lot of stuff in my own life.
So there's no like big T and little T.
There is big, I would call it little T trauma because it wasn't like I wasn't.
So it's all trauma. It all can affect you.
Yeah.
And you help people work through that.
Sure. And the effects of that and what I'm sure we'll talk a lot about.
Holistically.
Exactly. Without drugs.
Well, I was going to say, let's talk about this word holistically. Like, what does that mean?
It means that I'm looking at and more importantly, helping the person to see themselves as a whole person. It's not just, I have this anxiety and let's just look at that. It's like when a surgeon says, you've got a problem, you got pain in your hip. Let's just narrow vision, look at your hip and drill on your hip and get you an artificial hip. It's looking at the whole person. What's going on in your mind? What trauma is being held in your body? And how are you spiritually?
So whole, like WHOLE instead of like whole HOLE.
Sure, like a hole in your soul.
Okay, right. That's what I was thinking. Like holistically, just going to help this hole in my soul. Sorry, don't mean to laugh here. But
no, fine.
But you're absolutely right. We need to know what that means, right? We need to know.
The whole donut or the hole in the donut?
Or do you eat the whole donut? I don't know.
When you do get a donut hole to stick back in the part,
Right.
Is that part of your work, like to help people put their donuts back together?
Sure. Yes. I'm going to put that on my business card.
Right. I think this is
Can you
good.
put the hole in your donut?
I think so.
Yeah.
If
So
this makes it on the podcast, this is going to be amazing.
It needs
This is going to be, if this makes the final cut,
I think it should.
I think it should too.
I think it should.
absolutely, I'm up for it.
Okay.
Yeah. So what the essence of what I do is help people understand that they have parts. And aside from those parts, right, they have who they really are inside.
Mhm.
That most people are completely clueless that they have. I call it with my clients, I call it the big blue sky. We have the big blue sky, and that's sort of ineffable. It's hard to describe, but the sky holds the massive tornadoes, the hurricanes, the tsunamis, the thunder, the lightning, all that stuff that's going on. And when those clouds clear, you still have the big blue sky. It hasn't been harmed. It's unable to be harmed. It is ever present. It's always there, and it's that thing. It's who you are when there's no problems to solve, and whatever you want to call it, your spirit, your Christ consciousness, the
Inner child.
the Christ that lives within you, the who you really are, right? The thing that
Your
right
true
now
self.
is your true self, whatever's breathing you in and out right now, whatever that is always there. And then we have parts. So we have, and the thing about that's really the villain in my story, the modern day psychology, thinking that our minds are just one thing. So if you have anxiety, then you have this disorder, you're broken in some way, you need fixing. If you have an alcohol problem, then you are an alcoholic, that's your identity, you have this problem that needs to be fixed. I don't see it that way. I say you have a part of you that is anxious that comes online when it gets activated. You have an alcoholic coping strategy, it's a part of you that comes online. 95% of your system doesn't really want that alcoholic part there, but nevertheless, it's a learned coping strategy. So what I'm teaching my clients to do is map out their parts. And just like Jesus went out into the world, I'm not like a religious counselor by any means, but Jesus went out into the world with this essence of truth and compassion. And no matter who he encountered, whether it was a prostitute or people suffering, right, the leper, he just that presence of compassion and unconditional loving presence that he was the healing that took place. Your faith has saved you, right? Like he said. So he awakened that truth inside each person. And that's sort of what I teach my clients to do, because healing happens when you come back into relationship with who you really are. So inside, anxious part meets who you really are, as I guide people back to that, and they have a conversation. What is the problem here? What are you afraid would happen if you didn't have a panic attack? What are you trying to protect me from? So it's when people come back into relationship with their parts and see it that way, rather than seeing I'm something that needs to be fixed and I'm broken. That healing just happens spontaneously. So they are the healer. Just waking them up to who they are is the healer.
You mentioned anxiety, and what age of a patient do you see? I hear of a lot of students even next door at the high school and down to the middle school age, just dealing with depression and anxiety.
Children
and
make me
such.
very anxious.
They make me anxious too. But like, do you see younger patients, or are you just seeing those patients 18 and up?
I usually, right now, my youngest client is 17.
Okay.
I just graduated someone who was 16.
Okay.
So 16 is kind of my limit, just
Okay,
because of the
yeah.
language that we're using.
Sure.
In sessions, I want them to have the comprehension,
The understanding of what
Sure.
you're trying to help with.
Sure. Now with my own kids who are, 14, 16, 18, and 22, they've been hearing about this since they were young.
That's where you practiced.
That's where I honed my craft on my own kids.
So, if someone said know thyself, so how does that play into your view of counseling and how a person, so which self is someone supposed to know?
Yeah, the real one.
The real
self.
one. Okay.
How many selves do you have?
Right.
Like,
we have self and we have parts.
yeah, I think it might be
Okay,
parts, right?
yeah.
So I'm like, if I'm nervous, I'm not nervous. I've got like a nervous part, is what you're
Yes.
saying?
The way you know
right.
is if there's an agenda.
Oh, I see.
If the part has an agenda, meaning, and you only know that when you ask the question, because self energy does not have an agenda other than connection with all the parts. So if it's trying to do something for you, if you ask that part of yourself, in a session, what are you trying to do here? What are you afraid would happen if you didn't bring nervousness online? You're nervous because you're probably, not you, but one would be fearing, I'm going to say the wrong thing, or I'm going to get laughed at, or I'm going to be humiliated, or I'm going to be rejected. That tells me as the practitioner, oh, okay, so I have a hunch this person has been humiliated, shamed, rejected somewhere in the past. These parts come online when those traumas, big T or little, through their parents, or something happened at school or whatever it was. But at that point, part came online, and their mantra is never again. Never again will I let this person experience shame, humiliation, rejection, being made fun of, physical wounding, whatever it is. So these parts come online to protect us. So we get social anxiety that keeps us in our house. We avoid social situations so that we don't even have the opportunity to be rejected again or to be laughed at again. So every part, when you really start talking to it and hearing what it's been through and what it's doing, you hear that all of their intentions are good. Even the alcoholic, even somebody who has suicidal thoughts, all of those parts, they are maladaptive, sure, but they have very good reasons from their perspective of how they're trying to protect the person. So no bad parts. All parts are welcome.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man. So you see patients with any of these issues from,
Sure.
talking about suicidal thoughts,
Absolutely.
alcoholism. So you see
They're
all
just
of
quote
those
unquote
and-
normal, someone wanting to be better at life or business or.
Yeah. Because there is a
Yeah.
coaching aspect to it. So
Is there normal?
No, I don't think so.
There's common.
There's common.
Right?
That's right.
Someone told me there's common. It might have been Dr. Alexander that said there's common, but there's not normal. So how did you get involved in this?
Well, I've always had just a pull towards holding space for people. I've always felt a little bit off the beaten path of what society would consider normal. Even when I was younger, middle school, high school, I was the one people would come to with their stuff. Because I that's just part of my makeup. But also, my kids, I went through divorce 6 years ago. My son had a very hard time. We went through 5 years where he was really it was really traumatic for me, not just for him and for the whole family, but he was suicidal. I mean, where he would be screaming, I don't want to live. And it was horrible to live through. And going through that divorce really, opened my eyes, and the ability to see him or to transform the way I saw him as this broken kid to, wait a minute, he's got this part that is serving him, where there's so much pain under there that this part is saying death is a better choice to keep you from having to experience what our household was experiencing. And now he and I, he's completely on the other side of that. And we're able to actually move into that space of gratitude for that part, because it felt like it was preserving him from having to experience pain. And so things in my own life that just struggles, and the way that I was raising my kids when they were really young, the anger that would come up when I was with them, when I was homeschooling them when they were really young, I was noticing patterns in my own mothering and in the way that I was trying to cope with just life and having 4 little kids and a marriage that wasn't the greatest. And I was thinking to myself, I think I'm broken. Why am I behaving like this? Where is this coming from? And so it really was a quest to figure myself out. And luckily I came across mentors who helped me see that. I was in naturopath school, but I was always interested in, okay, well, there's more to this than just vitamins and minerals and diet, because that's really what you learn in naturopath school. And I came across a book called The Healing Mind. It was the very last book we had to read in our curriculum. And it was all about the emotional root of disease, not just physical disease, but also, what the world calls mental illness, which I don't believe in that word. And so that really just sparked something in me. And from that point, I was like, oh my gosh, there's more. There's an emotional component to sickness and to wellness. And I just dove deep into that. And when the student is ready, the teacher appears, as they say. So as soon as I realized that was my calling, all the right teachers showed up, and I continued my education and learned what I now use called internal family systems, which is the model that I work with clients now.
This is deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Need some more coffee? Paul?
Yeah, maybe.
So IFS, internal family systems,
Yeah.
is kind of the model. So people meet with you in person or like online, and you do like a session with them, or do you have like a certain way that you talk to folks, or how does that go?
Do you have a couch?
A couch?
No.
Do they still
no.
do that? Like,
They-
do you like lay on the couch and tell me all your problems?
No,
not
that's
really.
what most of my clients have been through.
Okay.
That's like talk therapy?
Yeah, like 100% of my clients
Yeah.
have been let.
Or maybe it's called couch therapy.
It's just talk therapy. Normally, it's they've gone through, like when you go to your insurance and click on show me a provider for mental health. It's not in all cases, but most likely it's going to be a cognitive behavioral therapist, so CBT. And I'm not going to poop on that field because that's not my field. But I just know that 100% of my clients have had that experience where they say, I've been seeing a therapist for 10 years and I don't feel any better. And so it heaps from my
therapist feels worse after I've visited, so I can understand.
Well, then certainly, and when I'm done with session, I feel enlivened. I feel fulfilled. I feel lit up. I feel clear. I feel like I've had a session myself. Because I'm not in therapist parts, I'm in self energy, holding that for them, which is very invigorating. It's not draining. A lot of my clients are like, don't you get just drained listening to people drone on about their problems day after day? Absolutely not, because that's not what we're doing at all. It's not just sitting on the couch using your logical part of your brain to talk about things. That does not work with trauma. Because if you think about it, when you were 5, 6, 7 years old, your prefrontal cortex wasn't even formed yet. It wasn't all the way online. So developmentally, how are we going to talk to those parts that are still energetically alive in you and try to use logic? Why are we trying to out logic trauma that happened that's now sitting in like the emotional and like the lizard parts of your brain, the survival parts of your brain? It just doesn't work. So we don't do that. That just tends to shame them. Like, why are you thinking about it this way? It doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, if that worked, because I went to a cognitive behavioral therapist, that was part of the journey was the failure of that for me. You can't logic me out of having a panic attack. You can't talk anyone who's had panic attacks. And I was diagnosed with a panic disorder. You can't talk yourself out of it. My ex-husband used to say, why don't you just calm down? I was like,
that doesn't work, does
why
it?
didn't I think of that?
Thank you for letting me know.
Gosh, I wish I could have just.
That line does not work in my family.
History of the world.
Does not.
Why don't I just calm down? And it's because you're not in that part of your brain. You cannot cognitively, be logical about this rush of emotion that you're having. It's just not in that part of the brain.
However, you're able to work with clients to settle that, listen to that, hear those parts, and bring some healing?
Absolutely. Yeah. So what it looks like, it sounds like you're asking me, what does a session look like? Yeah. So
probably like this podcast here. I feel like we're being like subjects.
This is our free session, first session.
Yeah. Well, I do a 15-minute, like a free consultation, just so that they can hear and see if it resonates with them in their system. Because if they're looking for a CBT, like they're just looking for, I need to vent, and I need to get another point of view and I need advice, then I'm probably not the person. But if we want to dive deep and really heal and have those parts that are manifesting, the anxious parts, the angry parts, the addict parts, if they're interested in getting to know those and having that be like breadcrumbs down to a wound somewhere and actually heal that, then I'm your girl.
So a session looks like a conversation.
Sure.
Someone's talking and then.
Yeah. And I'll reflect back like, oh, so is it okay if I be a parts detector? And they'll usually say yes. And I'll reflect back to them what I'm hearing them say. And it sounds like that's an anxious part. right? And they'll say, yeah, it's an anxious part. And I'll say, and I'll educate them a little bit on self and parts. See if they can find that in their body. Because a lot of times when we get nervous, where do we feel it? In our tummies, right? We have a nervous stomach, right? And so I'll ask them then, okay, well, does it feel possible to take that nervous part and ask it to give you some space and put it right in front of you, like in their sort of an imaginary, like a mind castle, right? And in their mind, so their eyes are usually closed, and we're usually not in person, but they're in their bed, comfy on their laptop or wherever they are. And I'll have them have that part right in front of them. And it's amazing how that part will appear. And I'll say, how old is that part? Ask it. Just be open to what you hear.
It's like a conversation with yourself.
A conversation with them. I'm just guiding their conversation with the part.
It sounds deep, as you mentioned.
Real deep.
Right?
Yeah.
And it'll tell them things, and it'll there's a whole series of questions that you would ask to get to know the part and befriend it. And it will lead you to the part that they're protecting, which is the wound.
So if someone wanted more of the session that Paul and I have had today.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they wanted to, how would someone contact you or learn more about what you do?
I have a website, as most people do, compassionatecounsel.co.
Not .com. So it's
.com.
compassionatecounsel.co.
That's right.
And Mary Alexander with Compassionate Counsel, that's a place to go and learn. And you said you do a 15-minute free consultation.
Nice. We need to get for.
I think we'll need more than 15 minutes.
We each get 15. We can do it together.
Oh.
We get 30?
I think you get 30, I get 30?
Maybe. I'm sure.
Okay. Who brings the donuts is the question.
We'll bring the donuts.
Yeah, that sounds great. Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today?
No, I think we covered that and a lot more.
We did. Mary, thank you so much for joining us on the Chamber Neighbors podcast. And we appreciate you. And listeners, go and check out compassionatecounsel.co to learn more about her and her business.
All right. Thanks so much for listening. And if you'd like to learn more about the Chapin Chamber of Commerce, please visit our website at chapinchamber.com. You can also contact us about being a featured guest or nominating someone for a future episode of this podcast.
This has been the Chapin Neighbors Podcast, where we highlight all that makes our community special. We hope you enjoyed our time together. Please like, subscribe, and share the Chapin Chamber Neighbors Podcast.